All right, so the point of what we're trying to make here is a dashboard that's going to hold all of our student data. We've got our student name up here that we can choose. Should be able to pick a different student. We've got how many scores we want to take for each test. This one doesn't have too many in there, but I can limit it to one, so that we're only taking one on there. And then for all of our testing data, whether it's state reporting testing data, progress reporting data, tests from different units within the class, things that we want to make sure that we can see right away, we want that all to show up right on this dashboard. So you can see that we've got our fast bridge reading test, our accelerated reader test, we've got our fluency test with the hot and cold, fry list, all of that stuff is showing up right here so we can see it front and center for each student. So this is what we're going to build. We've also got the all student data where we can see all of our students and the data that they've had. This is more like your grade book where it's just showing their most recent score for each of these individual tests. And the way that this data gets into this Google spreadsheet is through a Google form that looks like this. And so I'm going to go through the preview here just to show what this looks like. We've got our student name that we can choose. I can choose student. I can choose the date they got assessed. And then the point of this is to make it so that whoever's putting in this data doesn't have to see all of the inputs for these 6 different tests, but they can choose the data, the assessment that they're taking on this day, and they can click it, and then they only see the inputs for that test. So if I choose the reading sight words, if my students are taking that test right now, and I've got Joan who's taking this test, and today she took list 3, mastered it, and she got a 98% on that test, I can just submit that test and don't have to look at all of the other inputs. Then if I go down to Susan, and let's say Susan is testing on the 9th, and she took the fast reading test, now we can say that she scored a 456, she was in the 76th percentile, she had a reading level of, I think this is a number, 3.4, and then we've got our fluency that she had an issue with. We can put that in, and that data is going to show up in our input here. So I can see that Susan took the fast bridge reading test. Her scores will be way down here. And I can see that Susan took the fry list test. And those scores are right there. We've got Joan right here. So all that's going to show up. And then that will pop over to this dashboard right here. Also in this dashboard, we can have this take our averages for us. So if we wanted to take the average of the last 3 times a student took a test, if they've taken it 3 times, it would all show up here. And then we get the average of that. So that's what we're going to work on today, is how to build a dashboard for student assessment data, the form that goes with it, and then how to make sure that everything's hooked up and it's moving into the right places. So when I'm building this form, the first thing I'm going to do is open up a new Google form, and I'm going to name it really whatever I want. I'm going to name this one student assessment data. And the first question that I'm going to have is my student name, because when we're using these Google spreadsheets, we want to make sure that the same new student name is getting put in every time. So if I want, for example, Justin, I want to make sure that that is different from Justin with a space. I don't really want somebody to be able to input Justin's name and put a space after it, because then Google Sheets isn't going to be able to recognize what's going on inside of that Google Sheet. So I really want to put in my student name so that they're a multiple choice drop down, so they're the exact same every time someone chooses that. So I'm just going to put in some of the student names that I had before. Let's put in 4 of them. And I'm going to choose this as a drop down. I just like the way that it looks a little bit better. My next question is going to be, what date of assessment was it? This is important because although the timestamp happens on the Google form, it'll collect that date. That might not have been the date that they were assessed on. So if I'm inputting all of this data on a Friday, that might not have been the actual date of that assessment. So I want to give them a chance to put in the date that the assessment happened. And then I'm going to ask for the type of assessment. And this is going to come in handy because we are going to make different sections for each of the different types of assessments. So I'm just going to type in any type of assessment that I want. Reading comprehension, let's go sight, words, fluency, and you can have as little or as many different types of assessments as you want. The more types of assessments you want, you put in, the more you're going to have to enter in some formulas for Google Spreadsheets. So I'm actually going to get rid of a couple. Let's get rid of a couple here. Let's leave us with 4. And I'm going to leave that as a multiple choice. So they have to choose one type of assessment here. Okay, the reason why that's important is because now we're going to build a section for each one of these types of assessments so that when they choose fluency, we can send them to the fluency section of this Google Form. So I'm going to make a section that's called Fluency. I'm going to make a section called Fast Reading. I'm going to make a section called MCA Reading. And I'm going to make a section called FNP. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is in each section, I'm going to add the questions that I want for that section. So for Fluency, I might say score, and that's going to be a short answer, and percentile. Sure, something like that. Let's say for the fast bridge reading, we're also going score, and we are also going to go percentile. All right. For MCA reading, that's just looking for a score. And then for F and P, this one is going to, let's say, look for reading level. One thing that I can do is I can validate these inputs so that it has to be a, for example, a number. So if I wanted to make sure that my score was going to be a number, I could go down to these three dots, click response validation, and say number, let's say, does have to be a number. And if they say it has to be a number, or if they put in something that's not a number, let's say entry must be number. So that could happen too. You could put that in and ask for all those. It is going to be important to not put required down for any of these because we are going to be sending them to just one section and not some of the other sections. So you don't want to make those pieces required. Now what I want to do is I want to go back to this type of assessment question. Once I've got all of the questions in here that I want for the data that I want to collect, right, that I want to be showing in my dashboard, I go back to this question where I'm asking for the type of assessment, and I click this button that says go to section based on answer. And I'm going to be setting up my Google Sheet so that if they click Fluency, they are going to go to the section on Fluency. And if they click Fast Bridge Reading, they're going to go to the section on Fast Bridge Reading. MCA, they're going to go to the section on MCA, and the same with F and P. Okay, so now when they click those, they're going to go to that section so that they're not seeing all of these questions every time they submit the form, or I submit the form, or whoever's doing this, but I'm only seeing the questions, the inputs for these assessments for the one that I want, for the one that student's taking. Now I need to go down and change this part here. So after section 1, I do want to continue on to the next section. But then after the Fluency section, I want to change this so that the form is being submitted. If I don't click submit the form, when someone's getting to the Fluency section, they go up here, they type in the student's name, they put the date of assessment in, they choose Fluency, they only want to see these questions. They go to Fluency. If I don't change this to submit form, they're going to go directly onto the Fast Bridge Reading section. And the same thing with all of these. So I want to go submit form for all of these different sections. And then the F and P can just leave. Because it's the last one, it's automatically going to submit the form. So if you wanted to have people to be able to put in any assessment, all of the different types of assessments on their the time that they're inputting data into this form, you certainly could. I think it's best for the way that I've used it to just have one section at a time be shown. So we've got that part down. Now we're going to look at some of the settings. Make this a quiz. I'm actually not going to make this a quiz because these aren't questions that are getting graded. It's just data that's getting inputted into a Google Sheet in a certain way, and so I'm going to leave that one blank. You can look at the responses and see what you want to do. Since it's just me or a paraprofessional or another teacher who's putting this in, I'm not going to collect email addresses. I don't really care who puts the data in as long as I have the student's name in there. Don't want to limit it to one response. Look through some of the presentation stuff. This stuff doesn't matter a ton. We're good there. And then some of these defaults, you can collect them. You don't want to make them required by default. So we're sitting pretty good on our form here. And then the next thing that we want to do is we just want to test it out to make sure that it's working right. So I'm going to click preview. I've got my student name here. I can put in my date, and I'm just checking to see that everything is working right. I should see myself go right to the MCA reading section. It looks like I did. And then if I put in a form or a number, I should see myself go to the submit form page, and I should be able to go and submit another response. So we can just try this out a couple times. Go to F and P. That one's working. And again, you might have more questions on this than I do, but I'm just trying to keep it pretty minimal to get the idea of what's going on here. Let's go Fast Bridge. Fast bridge reading is working. They got a 98th percentile. Good. And then let's check the last one here. Fluency 234. Sure. Okay. So our form's working. I can see our responses in here. The next thing that I want to do is I want to make a spreadsheet right here. And this should say create spreadsheet. And I'm just going to click that create spreadsheet, call it student assessment data. And now I should be able to see my timestamp. I should be able to see the student name, the date of the assessment, and the type of assessment. And I should be able to see all of the different scores. Now, what I can do here is I can change some of these. So this score is different from this score, which is different from this score, which is different from this percentile and that percentile. So I could go in and change these to make them a little bit more obvious. What's going on here? This score is fast score. This is fast percentile. This one is MCA score. And this one is F&P reading level. I just want to go and make my headings something that I can recognize so that when I'm going through and coding some of these functions, that it makes sense to me and it's easy to see. So now we're going to work on building up this dashboard the way that we want it. All right, so before I make any sort of formula or function in this Google Sheet, I want to format it so that my dashboard is going to show the data where I want it to be, and it's going to look a certain way. And then I'm going to add in some of these queries, these functions that I'm looking for to make my dashboard actually fill in with data. So I'm going to type in dashboard, and I'm going to be using the old one as kind of a template. Let's put the student name right below there, and let's put number of tests right here. We won't use that right away, but that's going to be something where, like, if I want to show 3 tests, I can have number 3 here, or I can have 2 if I only want to show the most recent 2. Then I'm going to take my different tests. So let's say I want to make a box for my MCA reading. Let's go MCA reading. That's going to be here, and the data that I want to show is, I don't need to show the student name because that's going to be shown right here. So I don't need to show student name. I probably want to show the date of the assessment that they took it. I don't need to show the type, but I do want to show any MCA scores that we have. So the only data that I'm collecting from MCA is this MCA score, which is a 452. So I want to show the date of assessment and the MCA score. So I'm going to add that into this date of assessment, and I can put it, yeah, sure, MCA score. Okay, now we want to make this look a little bit prettier. Here, I might want to merge this together. Here, make this centered. And depending on how many I want to show, I don't really see a whole lot of need to show more than 3 of the last 3. So I'm going to make 3 spots for it. We could even put this in a little box if we wanted to. So we'll have the date of the assessment coming down here, and we'll have our actual score showing up right here. Then I might want to have the average. Sure. Showing right here, that would go there, and I'm going to make this a right side. That's going to show up right there. So let's take the average of those 3. Okay, now I want to look at some of my other data. It's not that one. I'm going to go here. So FMP. Let's see. So FMP, I'm going to want to show, don't need the student name, don't need the time date, want to show the date. And all I have for FMP is reading level. So that's going to look almost exactly like my MCA reading score. I'm just going to copy and paste it over. Oops. Copy and paste. Let's go FMP. FMP score, date of assessment. Oh, that doesn't look great. We should move that down one. Okay. Next, let's see. We want to do fluency test. So fluency is going to be a bit different because I'm taking in, I want to see the date of their assessment that they took. I want to see their score, and I also want to see their percentile. So I'm going to have to make this one look a bit different. Let's see. We can pretty much use the same thing. This just needs to be 3. Fluency score, and we want to have score and percentile. We're going to get rid of all these, and we'll still put that little guy right here. Okay, so we've got the date of assessment, score, percentile, and the average of those. Oh, that looks pretty good. We'll leave that one there. And then I want to use my next one. So FastBridge is the next one, and that is going to show date. We've got the FastBridge score and the FastBridge percentile. So that's going to look very similar to this fluency reading one. Copy and paste. Let's go fast. Fast reading, we want score and percentile. All right, so next what I want to do is I want to take my student name, and I'm just going to get this done now since I'm on this sheet. I'm going to validate. I want to make sure that people are able to choose the student name from these form responses, so it's reading the exact match. So I just want to take my student name right here, click here, list from a range, put up my data set, go here, and then I want to get rid of the numbers here, so it's going to take from this column as more students get added to this. So I'm going to click OK, save. I'm actually going to wait. This should work. Yep. And we can test. If it's working and if it's going to take future data by going up to back to our form and adding in a new student. Let's see. Go here, and if I add Mitch's name in, he should end up going into our pretty simple data here. We should see Mitch show up. Yep, and it does, because now his name is added onto this column, and we're taking data from the whole column, so that works out good. Now what I got to do is I actually have to make a new sheet for each one of these different tests. I'm going to sort these form responses into the dashboard here, or into each one of those individual sheets, and then I'm going to pull them over into the dashboard. There might be some other ways of doing this, but I think this is a good way of setting up this data. So we're going to pull it into different sheets. Each test is going to get its own sheet, and then we're going to pull it from there into here. So I'm going to make 4 new sheets, and I'm going to name them MCA reading. I'm going to name the next one F&P. I'm going to name the next one Fluency. And I'm going to name the next one FastBridge. All right, I like to put this form responses in the front. These are not going to be edited. They're just going to be queries that are pulled into the sheet. This is going to be one that we can edit, so I like to put it ahead of these ones. Now we got to write our query. So I want to pull all the MCA testing data that's on this sheet, and I want to pull it into this one here. So the way that I do that is I go to equals query. I select my data, which goes here. This is A. I'm just going to use all of column A and all of column J because that's all of my data that I have. I am going to select, now I want to choose the columns. So for MCA reading data, I want to select the student's name, the date of the assessment. I am going to select D. I probably don't need to, but I want to just have it in there anyway so we can see that it's MCA data if anyone were to look at it and not look at the name down there. I don't know. Maybe you don't need it, but I want to put it there. So I need student name, date, type of assessment, and then my MCA score is actually in this column I. So those are the ones that I want to select. So I want to go B, C, D, and I. All of those columns in cases where D equals MCA reading. So I am sorting this based off of what this column says. If D equals MCA reading, like it does right here, I want to pull that data over. And I'm going to order by column C, and that's going to be descending. So I believe the oldest one is on the bottom and the newest is on the top. So we're going to go here, and I have one row of headings. Click enter. And so this worked out. So we've got our student name, we've got our date of assessment for the MCA reading test. The newest date is on the top, and then we've got our score over here. So I'm going to do the same thing for F&P. Equals query. My data is this. A, J. Select B, C, D. And now for my F&P, that column is column J, where D equals F and P. Let's just make sure I got this right. F and P. Okay. And I'm going to order by C, descending. Should work. Looks like it does. Good. So I'm going to copy this over because really we're doing the same thing. We're just changing what these say. Let's go to fluency. Add that one in here. Now I don't want this to say F and P. I want this to say fluency. And now I want to go get my columns. My fluency columns are E and F. F and P. These are E, F. Yep, right like that. Okay, we'll do it one more time. Take this, put it over my fast bridge reading one. I've still got my same columns where D equals fast reading. So we're pulling it. Now we just got to get the scores, and let's go figure out what columns those are. Fast bridge reading is G and H. Okay, so we've got our MCA data, our F&P data, our fluency data, and we've got our fast bridge reading data all separated out. Now what I like to do, since I'm not going to be messing with these again, I like to set the permissions and show a warning when editing these, just so that they're not going to get messed with, because really they shouldn't be. So anything that, you know, if somebody else is going to be using it, or even if I'm going to be using it and I forget what I'm doing with it, I like to protect anything that is not supposed to be edited unless there's like something wrong with the sheet. So I'm not going to leave those open. They shouldn't get touched from now on. We'll use them to pull some queries into our dashboard, but until then we won't, you know, I guess outside of that we won't need them. So now for my dashboard, now what I want to do, the reason why I did this is because if I didn't put this MCA reading data in here, my query is not exactly going to work right. If I go through my form responses here, it might not pull the right data, or it could be a little bit more complicated. Now it's going to be not too bad to write our queries from here. So I'm going to look at my MCA data. Now I want to query from my MCA reading sheet, this one here, and it's just going to be A1 all the way down to D. Let's just go A to D. And now I want to select column B and D, where column A equals, now I'm dependent on another cell again, so I've got to keep this part right here. This is something's going to go into here. Now I want to look over and make sure that says A3. So it's dependent on here. I don't really need to order by, because it's going to order on its own since it's already ordered, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to go limit, let's go limit 3. Enter. And then I'm going to, that's going to say, limit 3 is going to say, I only want to pull 3 responses from this. We're going to change that so that it says number of tests. Oh, heck, let's just do it right now. Limit whatever number this says, so C3, BO. And then they'll go, let's see. Oh, since that's the number, we want to get rid of these single quotes. Maybe we want to keep the single quotes and get rid of the double quotes. Oops. Let's see. Where E equals, or A equals this student's name. Oh, there's nobody in there. That's why that's doing that. Actually, I think it's because of this. Now there's still nobody in there. That's fine. Let's go look. Let's look for somebody who does have MC reading data. Justin. Let's just make sure that works. And it doesn't. That's not what we want this to say. Well, we want some sort of a 3. Let's put this in here. Oh, we did have it right. Well, that's not so bad. And then we actually don't want these headers. There we go. That part will work out good. We could actually put this down to A2 to D2 just to be safe here. D, let's go 0, headers. Yeah, that's what we want right there. Okay, so now if I go to Susan, okay, yeah, now we're set up. Okay, so here's the query. Query equals the MCA reading data from A2 to D. So I'm selecting all of the data that I could have and getting rid of the last number so that it'll go all the way down the column. I'm selecting the date of assessment and the score, where the name, column A, is equal to this right here, and I'm going to limit whatever number this says in here. Okay, and I'm getting rid of the columns. Now, one thing that I could do here, because this could cause problems if I have like a 5, that's going to overwrite my average. So I'm going to go to data validation. I'm going to list of items. I'm going to go 1, 2, or 3. So now I can have 2 here. So then what we're going to do is we're going to try to get the same thing going on in our F&P and our fluency reading and fast reading that we've got going on in the MCA data here. So I'm going to actually just copy this over my query. And I'm going to paste it right in the F&P data. And then I just need to change which sheet this is coming from. So F and P. So it's pulling from here. My columns shouldn't really change. It's B and D. I want my A in that column. I'm guessing that should be my student name. I want it to equal this, and I still want to limit based off of this. And so we should really be fine here. I think the only thing that we're going to run into is that there's no student data for Justin in that F&P. So let's just look and see who's taken that. Joan's the only one who's taken it. So let's go to Joan, and that works. So this one's working. Joan hasn't taken this assessment yet, so nothing's showing up in there. So we're still sitting pretty good. So we're going to copy the same thing and paste it into here. Now I want my fluency to say, let's go fluency from A2 to D. And this one should be a bit different because we went out to E, and I want to pull B, D, and E from this one, and I want my A3 to stay the same. So let's look at this. B, D, and E, where A is equal to that, and that's our limit. Joan, again, hasn't taken that one, so nothing's going to show up there. Let's look at fluency. I feel like I've got something wrong here because Joan has taken this one. Let's check. Fluency. We want to go with A through E. Oh, I know what happened right here. I got to go out to E because we want to pull data from all the way out there. Now this should work. And Joan's score was 1278. Check on the 15th. Yep, so we're good there. All right, I'm going to copy the same thing over. Let's take MCA reading is now going to be fast reading there, and I want to make this E. Select B, D, and E where A is equal to that, and the limit is based off of there, so we should be sitting good there. Now let's just change our formatting, get this right, and we should be sitting all right. So now I have a dashboard that works for all of my students and pulls the correct data over here. Now the last thing I want to do is I just want to set up my average on this part. Get whatever data that I'm collecting set up here. So that's going to take the average. Let's just see if we can copy this over. Right there, and we've got nothing there, there, and there. So it's going to take the average of all those. I can just double check. And if I wanted to set this up, I could put into all of these error. I could put an if error so that if nothing shows up, that n-a is going to show up. So we got NA, that they haven't taken that one. And let's just, since we can do this. Okay, so we're sitting all right there, and I can pretty much do whatever I want with these. If I want to make them bold, to make them stand out a bit more, but that's how we take our form and put it into and make a student dashboard with that. Now, if we wanted to do this, we could set this up again so that we're making all student data. So we're going to do that in just a second so we can see all of our students all at one time. Look like, and I was using a VLOOKUP to do this part, and so we're going to try to get all of our students' names over on the left hand side. We're going to get all of our headings with their scores and their percentiles up here, and we're going to pull the most recent score. So this would be, our dashboard is going to be great for showing us the last few, the last two maybe, and taking the average of all those. Now if I wanted to have this set up where it's going to show me the most recent score for each student on one gradebook, I can also do that part. So I'm going to make another sheet here, and I guess what I should say is that if I wanted to set this up so that my gradebook, my all student gradebook, is showing the average scores, I could do that. It's going to be a little bit more complicated, not something I'm going to cover here, but it can be done. Maybe that's something for another video, but this, I just want to see all of my students' most recent scores on my all student assessment. So here's what I'm going to do. 18, let's make this most, just to show this. Now I want to create a list of student names, name, I want to go, and I'm using unique so that it pulls each individual student's name from this column. And again, I'm going to form responses. I'm using unique so that it'll read this entire column, and every time it gets a unique name, it's going to pull that into my all student data. So I don't have to worry about that, and I get rid of the number again so that it'll keep reading as more students get added into here. And I am going to go, yeah, right there. So now I've got each of my students' individual names, and as more names get added to the form responses, more students will get added here. Now what I want is I want to have my MCA scores. I'm just putting in headings now. So let's start with MCA scores. Let's put in our F&P score. Oops, I don't want to put that there. That would be confusing. F&P score. I want to have my fluency score and percentile. Fluency score and fluency percentile. And then I also want to have my FastBridge score and percentile. Fast score and fast percentile. So let's make sure all of these are wide enough. Okay, now a little bit of formatting. Let's get rid of all these boxes, put in the bottom part here. So now what I want to do is I want to look up in my MCA score data in this query, and I want to find the latest instance of Susan having a score in that data. So let's go equals VLOOKUP. My search key that I'm looking for is this name right here. My range that I'm going to look in is in the MCA score, and that's going to start in this column and go all the way down. The index that I'm going to return when they find a score is this column here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. And I feel like there's something else is sorted. I want to leave that to false almost always. So it is going to find Susan's score in that MCA. She got a 452. Now I've got to make this so that I can pull it all the way down the column. So let's just check over. I want A3 to be able to move. I want MCA reading. I want this range to stay the same. I want 4 to stay the same, and so I am going to actually go Command Shift all the way down, and then Command D on a Mac. It'd be Control on Windows. You know what I should do is I should put in if error here. Put in if error so that if nothing shows up, it just shows up as blank. And it looks like we gotta make these double quotes. Command Shift, Command D, and we're good. Okay, so they're all working, everything there. Now I've just got to do the same thing for the F&P and all of these other ones. So let's look at F&P score equals, let's just put our if error in. VLOOKUP, our search key is the name. Our range is right here, all the way down to D. Our index is 1, 2, 3, 4, and false. And then if there is an error, we want to put an empty string back. And then we want to take this. I know there's probably better ways to do this, but there we go. Okay, so those look like it's working. Let's do fluency score. VLOOKUP, our search key is here. Fluency data all the way here. And can I do, whoops, nope, we don't want that. What is the function? There we go, now I remember. And I want my score to show up as 1, 2, 3, 4, so this is 4, and then false is this one, and we want it to return nothing. There's all of our fluency scores, 78, 456, just because it looks weird. I want to look at it, 78, 456. Yeah, you're right, yep, that's right. And you can see that Justin had 2 of them in here, and it's going to pull his latest one, so 456, it'll pull the first one, at least it should. 456, yep. Okay, so this is very similar. I can pretty much copy this right over here. Let's make this an A, and then let's make this number a 5 because it's just the next one over. And then let's go here. There's our fluency. Now we want to do the same thing with fast, and I'm going to manually type it in. Let's go. Search key is Susan. My range is right here. Fast bridge. And I want to lock those. My index is 1, 2, 3, 4 again. And I want this part to not show an error. There we go. Okay. Oops. Back. Copy and paste. And now we want to go here. Let's just change this VLOOKUP into A. Our fast bridge reading looks the same. We got to change this to a 5 and click enter, and then now we go down. And I'm just dragging all of these through all of those columns by hitting Command D, and so we should see it show up there. Yep, and it'll go all the way down, so that it'll update as we add more students to this. So if I added, and I can actually do this right now, let's just add Chase. We should get another student getting added, and if I added in an MCA score for Chase, it would show up here. So let's MCA reading, and this is where you can edit the form responses here. MCA reading data was on, let's see, he got that. Man, a lot of people scoring that. Let's see. All students, Chase, and we're not seeing a whole lot of anything showing up here, so we should see Chase's MCA scores showing up. His 456 is not in there. That's in the wrong column. Now we should see it. 456. All right, now we know it definitely works. And there's our 456. So that's how we can take our Google form, our original Google form, putting in all of our different assessment data. We can put in the questions that someone would put in, whether it's us or another teacher or a paraprofessional or a student entering that in. So hopefully it's pretty foolproof with how they enter it in. Now remember, putting in some of your data validation where it's got to be a number can definitely help with that, depending on who you have putting that in. And then building out a dashboard for these students so we can take a look at all of our students' data based off of their names, and also see all of their students' data. So these can be really helpful, with conferences or with meetings or whatever, to just quick go print this off. It'll pull the last 3 results and give you the average of them, so you can talk about it very quickly, or anything else that you need to do like that. So before using this, once you make this, make sure that if this is all just dummy data in here, you're going to want to go back to your form, go to responses, go to individual, and then delete all of the responses in here, and then go through, and you don't have to delete it on every sheet, but once you have that form responses data deleted out of your Google form, you can go through your form responses here, this page, and you can just delete it, and everything should still work just like normally. You see a bunch of errors because now there's no data in there, but that is how that works. So I hope that was helpful, and now you have your student assessment data dashboard.